April 2001. 40 years after the fact, a federal archivist opens a declassified file from the Kennedy era. Inside, a top-secret memorandum from America's highest-ranking military officials. The document bears the signature of every service chief of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff. What it proposes would shock the nation. But this plan never went into the history books, because a single man rejected it before it could be executed. This is Operation Northwoods, the moment America's military leadership approved a plan to stage terrorist attacks on American soil against American citizens and blame it on Cuba to start a war. The Pentagon's plan to attack America. The Pentagon's plan to attack America. How JFK rejected America's most dangerous proposal. To understand how America's military came to propose this, you have to rewind to April 1961, the Bay of Pigs invasion. CIA-trained Cuban exiles launch an assault on Castro's regime. It's supposed to be a quick overthrow. Instead, it becomes a humiliating disaster. Within 72 hours, the operation crumbles. Over 1,400 exiles captured. JFK's presidency is bruised just 100 days in. Inside the Pentagon, military leaders blame the president. They believe he didn't give them enough support. They believe he's soft on communism. And they're already planning the next move. A move that will require the American people to want war so desperately they'll beg for it, no matter the cost. In November 1961, President Kennedy approves a covert operation called Operation Mongoose. Its goal? Overthrow Castro without American boots on the ground. The operation is run by the CIA and led by Attorney General Robert Kennedy, the president's own brother. But covert action takes too long. The military wants faster results, bigger action. And in March 1962, they come to Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara with a new proposal. The chiefs propose something unprecedented in American military history. Not the invasion they might expect, but the pretext, the reason to invade, a manufactured reason. In their own words, they submit a menu of false flag operations, options for how America could attack itself and blame Castro. March 13, 1962. General Lyman Lemnitzer, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, presents a document titled Justification for U.S. Military Intervention in Cuba. It contains proposals signed by every single service chief, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. The proposals are methodical, chilling, and absolutely serious. They propose to blow up a U.S. warship in Guantanamo Bay and blame Cuba for it. A Remember the Maine incident for the Cold War. They propose to create a fake terrorist campaign in Miami, bombings, fires, riots, to make it look like Cuban agents are attacking American civilians. They propose to hijack civilian airliners, to sink boats full of Cuban refugees and blame the Cuban Navy, to kill American citizens and call it an act of war by Fidel Castro. One proposal is particularly disturbing. They suggest painting a military aircraft to look identical to a commercial passenger jet, then remotely piloting it over the Caribbean and shooting it down, making it appear that Cuba murdered American tourists. The wreckage would wash ashore. The bodies would be counted. America would demand vengeance. The Joint Chiefs even went further in their planning. They proposed staging a Cuban terror campaign in Washington, D.C. and other major cities. What they meant was real bombs, real casualties, American blood. They detailed plans to plant forged Cuban documents at attack sites, to have military personnel dress as Cuban agents and give confessions to press cameras, to control the narrative completely. One section describes how to frame a landing operation against the U.S. base at Guantanamo Bay. They would stage an attack on themselves. American soldiers would fire on American positions, then blame it on Castro. It was terrorism designed by the U.S. government against the U.S. government. against the U.S. people, and every single Joint Chief of Staff signed their name to it. On March 13, 1962, General Lyman Lemnitzer walks into the office of Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara. He carries the Northwoods proposal in his hands. He places it on McNamara's desk and describes the plan, in detail. Terror attacks on Americans, fake Cuban evidence, dead civilians blamed on Castro. McNamara's reaction isn't recorded in the official history, but 3 days later, on March 16th, there's a presidential meeting. Lemnitzer is summoned to the Oval Office to brief President Kennedy directly. The military chiefs believe the president has been soft on Cuba, too hesitant, too willing to accept the existence of a communist state 90 miles from Florida. They're about to pitch their darkest idea to the most powerful man on Earth. When Lemnitzer enters the Oval Office on March 16, 1962, he presents the menu of false flag operations to President Kennedy, the military's justification for invading Cuba. Kennedy listens to the entire proposal, and then he rejects it, completely, bluntly. According to the official notes of the meeting, Kennedy tells the Joint Chiefs, "We are not discussing the use of military force." He then makes clear that General Lemnitzer may find the U.S. engaged in conflicts elsewhere, in Berlin or other Cold War hotspots, and therefore won't have the 4 divisions available to invade Cuba that the military is requesting. In other words, no war, no invasion, and certainly no false flag terror campaign. The meeting is over. Kennedy has just rejected the most dangerous proposal ever submitted to a sitting president. For President Kennedy, rejecting Operation Northwoods is just the beginning of a much larger conflict. The military has been humiliated by his rejection. The hawks believe the president is weak on communism. The Joint Chiefs begin to resent him, openly. But there is a consequence for Lemnitzer. Though he is not fired immediately, his influence is severely diminished. He is removed as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff within months. He becomes Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, a prestigious title on paper, but a demotion in reality. For Kennedy, however, the rift with the military deepens. In October 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis nearly brings the world to nuclear war. Again, the Joint Chiefs are pushing for military action. Again, Kennedy resists. He chooses diplomacy instead. The military never forgives him. But what Kennedy prevented that day in March 1962 was something the American people would never know about for 39 years. For nearly 4 decades, Operation Northwoods remains classified, only declassified in 1997 by the John F. Kennedy Assassination Records Review Board. When author James Bamford publishes Body of Secrets in 2001, the American public learns the truth. The military had proposed to bomb American cities, to sink American ships, to murder American civilians, all to fabricate a reason for war. Bamford himself calls Operation Northwoods maybe the most corrupt plan ever created by the U.S. government. The documents are no longer secret. They're archived online, available for anyone to read. The signatures are visible. The dates are clear. The intentions are unmistakable. America had come within a single presidential decision of becoming a nation that conducted terror attacks on its own people. Operation Northwoods teaches a haunting lesson about power without oversight. Generals and admirals for years believed they could propose attacking their own nation because they believed the mission justified the means, because they believed only they understood what America needed to defeat communism. They were wrong. But what saved America wasn't the revelation. It was a single man's gut instinct. Kennedy's rejection wasn't based on a detailed ethical analysis. It was an immediate, visceral no. Because he understood one simple principle: a president who murders his own citizens to fabricate a war is a tyrant, not a leader. The declassified documents sit in archives today, open source, publicly accessible. a permanent record of how close America came to becoming something unimaginable. Operation Northwoods failed because Kennedy said no. But ask yourself, would the next president have? Would the one after that? And if no one knows a plan exists in the first place, who's to stop it?